It is August 12, 2000, the Barents Sea, just off the northern coast of Russia. Hundreds of feet below the surface, the Russian nuclear submarine K-141 Kursk moves quietly through the cold, dark waters. A steel giant, nearly 500 feet long, armed with warheads, torpedoes, and loaded with enough firepower to level a city. On board, 118 sailors go about their routine. It's just another day aboard the pride of the Russian Northern Fleet. But deep in the torpedo room, something isn't right. A thin trail of liquid seeps from the highly volatile hydrogen peroxide is leaking from one of the massive Type 65 torpedoes. It drips, unnoticed, hissing softly as it eats through metal. 11:28 a.m. Suddenly, the first explosion. A blast rocks the forward torpedo compartment. The shockwave is immense. It tears through the front of the vessel, instantly killing most of the crew in the first two compartments. Automatic emergency systems activate, but it's too late. 2 minutes and 15 seconds later, 11:30 a.m. A second, far more powerful explosion follows. Equivalent to nearly 3 tons of TNT, it rips through the submarine's hull. Bulkheads collapse, compartments flood. The Kursk loses all power and begins its slow descent to the ocean floor. Out of 118 men, 23 survive the blast, trapped in the rear of the submarine, waiting. And in that silence, one man begins to write. A note never meant to be read. And yet, it echoes across the world. The Kursk, officially known as K-141, is an Oscar II-class nuclear-powered cruise missile submarine, a true symbol of Russian naval strength. Commissioned in 1994, Kursk stands among the largest and most lethal submarines ever built. Measuring nearly 154 meters in length and weighing over 24,000 tons, it is roughly the size of 2 Boeing 747s placed end to end. Only a handful of submarines are larger. Russia's Typhoon class, the largest ever constructed at around 175 meters, and America's Ohio class, which stretches to about 170 meters. It carries 24 P-700 Granite cruise missiles and powerful 65-76 Kit torpedoes, all backed by 2 nuclear reactors. It isn't just a war machine. It is built to survive a nuclear confrontation. The submarine was divided into 9 compartments, each with a specific task. Torpedoes and weapons systems at the front, followed by control rooms, crew quarters, equipment and reactors in the middle, and finally an emergency escape module at the rear. This layout was designed for efficiency and survival, but even the most advanced structure can't always withstand catastrophe. In August 2000, Kursk was chosen to lead Russia's largest naval exercise in over a decade. President Vladimir Putin, just months into office, wanted to project strength, both to the west and at home. 30 ships, 3 submarines, and thousands of sailors were deployed to the Barents Sea. For Kursk, this was routine. She'd done this before. On board Kursk are 118 men. Some of the best-trained sailors the Russian Navy has to offer. The crew is young, most are between 19 and 30 years old, with only a handful of senior officers over 40. Officers, engineers, sonar operators, weapons specialists, electricians. Each has a role, and each is part of the machine that makes Kursk more than just metal and reactors. Leading them is Captain Gennady Lyashin, an experienced submariner who spends more years beneath the ocean than most spend on land. In the 9th compartment, Captain Lieutenant Dmitry Kolesnikov oversees the ship's operations, the critical systems for damage control and survival. His role is essential, especially in emergencies, making him one of the most trusted officers among the crew. Deep inside Kursk's forward compartment, beneath layers of steel, sits one of the most feared weapons in the Russian arsenal, the Type 65-76 Kit torpedo. Over 11 meters long, fueled by high-test concentrated hydrogen peroxide, HTP, a volatile liquid that, when exposed to metal or impurities, violently decomposes. Western navies abandoned this type of fuel decades earlier due to safety concerns. Yet Russia, due to economic constraints and lack of alternatives, continues its use. Somewhere below the icy surface of the Barents Sea, the Kursk is in position to fire a dummy torpedo as part of the exercise. Suddenly, back-to-back explosions tear through the submarine. Out of 118 crew, 95 are killed instantly. Back at Naval Command, faint seismic readings register the Kursk's explosion, but no alarms are raised. The submarine fails to report in, its scheduled check-in at 13:30 on August 12, 2000, coming and going without a word. Delays during exercises aren't uncommon, so commanders dismiss it as a minor issue. It wasn't until evening that concern began to grow. Admiral Popov, commander of the Northern Fleet, orders a helicopter from the Potter-Veliki ship to search for the submarine. Inside, a handful of sailors sit in near darkness, staring at the escape hatch, their only way out. They face a daunting decision, one that could mean life or death. They could open the escape hatch now and swim the 100 meters to the surface using their rescue hoods. Right now, the pressure inside is close to normal. If they move fast, they can avoid decompression sickness. But it's not that simple. The moment they turn that wheel, freezing seawater could rush in, flooding the 9th compartment completely. If the injured among them even make it out, they'll face the brutal waters of the Barents Sea, near freezing, deadly. At best, they might survive an hour on the surface, drifting in the icy Barents Sea, hoping to be found in time. Or they can stay put. The nuclear reactors are shut down. This means no power for heating or for cleaning the air. The temperature is falling and carbon dioxide is building up. They do have emergency breathing equipment that helps clean the air. The cartridges use a chemical, potassium superoxide, which removes carbon dioxide and releases fresh oxygen. But these cartridges are limited, and they won't last forever. Late on Saturday night, 12 hours after it sinks, Popov informs the Kremlin. But Defense Minister Igor Sergeyev doesn't notify President Vladimir Putin until 7 o'clock on Sunday morning. Sergeyev does not recommend that Putin visit the disaster site. It takes the Russian Navy more than 16 hours to locate the submarine, resting 108 meters below the surface. What follows is a string of unsuccessful rescue attempts, hampered by outdated equipment and poor coordination. On Sunday morning, nearly a full day after the submarine sinks, search crews aboard nearby ships finally detect something on the ocean floor. Hopes surge when they believe they hear tapping, an SOS signal from survivors, but it turns out to be a false alarm, possibly an anchor or even marine life. The Russian Navy begins its rescue efforts using 2 Prinz-class deep submergence rescue vehicles, DSRVs. The first submersible, AS-34, deploys early, but accidentally collides with the Kursk's hull in the murky, low-visibility waters of the Barents Sea. The impact damages its structure, forcing it to surface before making any meaningful contact. Shortly after, the second DSRV, AS-32, is launched, but a navigation error sends it in the wrong direction, costing several crucial hours before it's finally redirected to the wreck. As conditions worsen, the Navy lowers rescue bells, rigid diving chambers meant to latch onto submarine escape hatches, and deploys remotely operated vehicles, ROVs, with mechanical arms and cameras. But technical failures, strong underwater currents, and near-zero visibility make precise maneuvering almost impossible. Early on Sunday morning, 13th August, at the WWII naval base, rumors begin to circulate among family members of Kursk's crew that something is wrong. A telephone operator handles an unusual volume of calls and overhears that a submarine is in trouble and the boat's name. As the base is very small, news spreads quickly. Wives and family members exchange updates, but information remains scarce. Because Kursk is regarded as unsinkable, family members try to dismiss the worst of the rumors. They hope that Kursk is merely experiencing a temporary communication problem. The deputy base commander assures the women that the headquarters office is half empty and that the officers present are just passing the time. It is not until Thursday, 5 days after the sinking, that President Putin finally accepts international assistance. By then, critical time is already lost. On the 18th of August, 6 British and Norwegian dive teams arrive. The next day, the ship Norman Pioneer brings the British LR-5 rescue submarine.
Only once those pressures have been equalized can you open the hatches safely and then let people transfer from the distress submarine into the rescue ship.
Russian officials tell the divers they can only work at the back of the submarine, near the escape hatch and an air valve above the 9th compartment. The Norwegian divers disagree with these limits, believing they slow down the rescue. Eventually, the divers manage to gain access. Norwegian teams cut a hole in the submarine, and Russian divers go inside through the 8th compartment to reach the rear of the vessel. By August 21st, the truth can no longer be withheld. Norwegian divers, having finally reached the Kursk's wreck, confirm the worst fears. No one in the 9th compartment has survived. The Russian public is formally told what they have already begun to suspect. 118 sailors are gone. On August 22nd, President Putin declares a national day of mourning. 4 days later, he posthumously awards the title of Hero of Russia to the Kursk's captain, Gennady Lyachin. The rest of the crew received the Order of Courage. But grief quickly turns into suspicion. In the days after the sinking, high-ranking naval officials begin floating a theory. The Kursk has collided with a foreign submarine, most likely from NATO. No proof is provided, but the narrative takes root and is repeated for years by senior Russian officers. The claim, politically convenient during a time of strained East-West relations, fuels nationalist sentiment. Russian sources name 3 specific vessels allegedly present: the USS Memphis, USS Toledo, and HMS Splendid. Despite the speculation, American and British officials firmly deny any involvement. Then U.S. Secretary of Defense William Cohen dismisses the theory publicly, asserting that no U.S. submarine had been in contact with the Kursk, and that seismic data points instead to internal explosions. Meanwhile, outrage builds, not just over what happened, but how it was handled. As the Kursk's crew remain trapped beneath the sea and rescue attempts flounder, families wait in anguish, receiving little information and no clear answers from authorities. Public trust in the government collapses. When President Putin finally visits the naval base at Vidyayevo, the damage is already done. There, surrounded by hundreds of grieving relatives, he faces a storm of anger and sorrow. For hours he listens as people demand answers. The Russian government launches a $65 million mission to recover the Kursk and its crew, contracting Dutch firms Smit International and Mammoet. It becomes the largest and most complex submarine salvage operation ever attempted. To avoid the risk from unexploded torpedoes, divers first cut off the bow using a special underwater saw, a process that takes 10 days. Several fragments, including a torpedo tube and sonar dome, are recovered for analysis. The main hull is lifted using a heavily modified barge, Giant 4, equipped with 26 hydraulic jacks and over 200 kilometers of cable. Divers cut matching holes in both the barge and the submarine to insert hoisting cables. After 15 hours of careful lifting, Kursk is brought to the surface on 8th of October 2001. After recovering the bodies from the wreck, investigators find 2 handwritten notes on Captain Lieutenant Dmitry Kolesnikov, a senior officer from the turbine unit. The first note, written at 13:15, less than 2 hours after the second blast, reads, "It's 13:15. All personnel from Section 6, 7 and 8 have moved to Section 9. 23 people are here." We feel bad, weakened by carbon dioxide. Pressure is increasing in the compartment. If we head for the surface, we won't survive the compression. We won't last more than a day. All personnel from Sections 6, 7, and 8 have moved to Section 9. We have made the decision because none of us can escape. At 15:15, Kolesnikov manages a second note, the handwriting faltering under worsening conditions. It's dark here to write, but I'll try by feel. It seems like there are no chances, 10 to 20%. Let's hope that at least someone will read this. Here's the list of personnel from the other sections who are now in the 9th and will attempt to get out. Regards to everybody, no need to despair. Kolesnikov. The official investigation into the Kursk disaster culminates in a 133-volume, top-secret report compiled by the Russian government and Prosecutor General Vladimir Ustinov, released in August 2002, nearly 2 years after the sinking. Only a 4-page summary is published in the state newspaper. It reveals widespread negligence, outdated equipment, protocol breaches, and a critically delayed rescue effort. The report concludes that the disaster began when hydrogen peroxide leaked from a faulty 6576 kit practice torpedo, triggering the first explosion. Despite internal concerns, the volatile HTP torpedoes had been approved by officers who lacked proper authority, and the dummy torpedo used during the exercise was a decade old. Its components well past their service life. Reportedly, one of the torpedoes may have been damaged after being dropped during transport, but was still loaded onto the submarine. Crew members had noticed fuel leaks from the torpedo's rubber seals the day before the exercise and reported them, but their warnings were dismissed in the rush to proceed with the mission. After the Kursk disaster, President Putin quietly begins replacing top military leaders. Defense Minister Igor Sergeyev steps down in March 2001 and is replaced by Sergei Ivanov, the first civilian to hold the position, which makes many in the military uneasy. Putin also removes key naval officials, including Fleet Commander Vyacheslav Popov and Admiral Mikhail Motsak, who strongly support the false theory that a NATO submarine causes the accident. Deputy Prime Minister Ilya Klebanov, who oversees the failed rescue and investigation, is also reassigned. In total, 12 senior officers are dismissed. Putin says it isn't because of the disaster itself, but because of organizational flaws. Most of them quietly move into other government or civilian jobs. In the years after the disaster, Russia takes quiet but meaningful steps toward change. In 2011, for the first time ever, a Russian submarine joins a NATO-led search and rescue drill, something unthinkable just a decade earlier.
NATO exercise Bold Monarch is an exercise that brings together all of the world's systems of submarine rescue into one coordinated exercise.
The Navy also begins training more deep-sea divers each year, doubling the number from around 20 to over 40, hoping to avoid another tragedy like the Kursk. Near Severodvinsk, where the submarine is built, a granite memorial now stands in the windswept dunes beside the sea. Carved into it are the words, "This sorrowful stone is set in memory of the crew of the nuclear submarine Kursk, who tragically die on the 12th of August 2000 while on military duty." Far away, in the city of Kursk, pieces of the sub's torn hull are turned into a monument, a silent, rusting tribute to the men who never come home. Out in the Pacific Ocean, in the quiet waters of Kwajalein Atoll, 3 bronze propeller blades are sticking out of the surface, 15 tons each. Been there since 1946. Below them, upside down on the sea floor, is a 200-meter German warship. A ship that survived everything it was supposed to die from. War. Torpedo attacks. Air raids. Even nuclear bombs. Nothing could sink her. Until something did. But the thing that finally destroyed her was never supposed to destroy anything. The war had a habit of humbling great ships. The Bismarck, unsinkable they said, lasted 8 days at sea before the Atlantic took her. The Yamato, the largest battleship ever built, sank in under 2 hours. The Hood, pride of the Royal Navy, was gone in 3 minutes. But there was one exception: Prinz Eugen. Launched in 1938 in Kiel, Germany, Prinz Eugen was one of the most advanced heavy cruisers the Kriegsmarine had ever built. Over 200 meters long, armed with 8-inch guns and capable of speeds exceeding 32 knots, it was designed for power, endurance, and survival in the harshest naval conditions. And over time, its crew gave it a nickname: the Lucky Ship. It wasn't hard to see why. In May 1941, Germany launched a bold plan to break into the Atlantic and attack Allied supply convoys. Prinz Eugen sailed alongside the battleship Bismarck, heading through the Denmark Strait, a cold and remote stretch of ocean between Greenland and Iceland. The mission was risky, and the British were already searching for them. A reconnaissance aircraft had spotted the German ships, and the Royal Navy moved quickly to intercept. On the morning of May 24th, in freezing fog, the two sides met. On the British side was HMS Hood, the largest warship in the world at the time, and a symbol of British naval power. Within minutes, both sides opened fire. But in the confusion of the fog, something unexpected happened. Prinz Eugen and Bismarck had nearly identical silhouettes at a distance, and British gunners initially targeted the wrong ship. Hood focused its fire on Prinz Eugen, believing it to be Bismarck, while the real Bismarck was left with time to find its range. At 6:01 a.m., that advantage proved decisive. A shell from Bismarck penetrated Hood's deck and detonated its rear ammunition magazine. The explosion destroyed the ship in just 3 minutes, killing 1,415 men. Only 3 survived. When the smoke cleared, Prinz Eugen was still there, undamaged, already slipping back into the fog. The Bismarck was hunted down by the Royal Navy and sunk days later. Prinz Eugen slipped away. In early 1942, it took part in one of the most daring naval operations of the war, the Channel Dash. Alongside 2 German battleships, it sailed through the English Channel in broad daylight, directly under British defences. The operation was considered extremely dangerous. It made it through. Then, weeks later, a British submarine put a torpedo directly into her stern. The explosion tore the rear of the ship apart. By any reasonable measure, she was finished. She was back in service within months. By the later stages of the war, the ship was no longer raiding the Atlantic. Instead, it was used closer to home, providing artillery support for German forces retreating along the Eastern Front. It fired thousands of shells as the war turned against Germany. And through all of it, it kept surviving. By May 1945, as Germany collapsed, the fate of most of its navy had already been sealed. Ships were sunk, scuttled, or destroyed. The oceans that had once carried fleets were now filled with wreckage. But Prinz Eugen remained, one of the only major German warships still afloat, still seaworthy, the Lucky Ship. So now you are probably thinking you know what sank her: 2 atomic bombs. And honestly, that is the answer everyone gives. But that is not what sank her, not even close. When the war ended, the Americans took the Prinz Eugen as a war prize. A US Navy crew sailed her to Philadelphia. Engineers spent months going through every inch of her, most advanced German surface warship they had ever touched. But she was German-built. Spare parts didn't exist in America. She needed a specialized crew. She cost a fortune to run, and by 1946, the US Navy was cutting ships by the hundreds. Nobody wanted her, so they found another use for her. In 1946, the United States was preparing a series of tests designed to answer a question no one had ever faced before. What happens when an atomic bomb is used against a fleet of warships? The operation had a name: Operation Crossroads. To do that, the United States assembled a fleet of target vessels, battleships, cruisers, submarines, and positioned them in the Pacific. Then they anchored the Prinz Eugen roughly 1,200 yards from ground zero. She was not a warship anymore. She was a guinea pig. July 1st, 1946. The first bomb dropped. It exploded in the air above the fleet. The Prinz Eugen bent her foremast, lost the top of her mainmast. That was it. She was fine. 3 weeks later came the second bomb. This one was different. Instead of exploding in the air, it was detonated 90 feet underwater. The explosion sent a column of water over a mile into the sky. It destroyed the ship directly above it instantly. A massive wave of radioactive water swept across everything in the lagoon. When the water settled, the Prinz Eugen was still floating. 2 atomic bombs, the most destructive weapons ever built. She survived both of them. So if it wasn't the bombs that sank her, what was it? When a nuclear weapon detonates underwater, the water itself becomes radioactive. And when that radioactive water washes over every surface, every deck, every bolt, every pipe, it doesn't evaporate off. It bonds to the metal at a molecular level. They tried to clean her. There are actual photographs of sailors on their hands and knees with mops and brushes scrubbing the steel. Some of them barefoot. Barefoot on a radioactive warship, scrubbing with brushes, trying to physically remove something that had bonded to the metal itself. It didn't work. The official decontamination report concluded it was conclusively impossible to remove this type of contamination from metal surfaces. So now you are probably thinking, that is what sank her. The contamination made her impossible to repair. Nobody could work on her. She slowly deteriorated until she went under. That is a reasonable answer. It is also wrong. Somewhere deep in her hull, there was a small leak. A failed valve. Water slowly entering her machinery space. Under normal circumstances, a 2-hour repair. A welder, a patch, done. But the compartment where the leak was located was so heavily contaminated that nobody could stay inside long enough to fix it. So they towed her to Kwajalein Atoll, 800 miles away, and while everyone figured out the next move, she quietly kept filling with water. December 22nd, a small harbour tug tried to push her into shallow water to beach her. She was 20 meters from shore when she rolled. The Royal Navy couldn't sink her. 2 atomic bombs couldn't sink her. A leaky valve did. She capsized, flipped upside down, and sank in 30 meters of water. 3 propeller blades sticking up into the open air. But sinking was not the end of her story. What happened next, over the 80 years that followed, is the part that nobody saw coming. In the 1970s, the US Army Corps of Engineers sent divers down to properly assess what was left. They took measurements. They tested the radioactivity levels. They tried to figure out what removing her would actually take, and what they found surprised everyone. By then, the radiation had largely faded. The contamination from 1946 had decayed over 3 decades. Divers could work on her safely. The hull was still largely intact, more ship than wreckage even after 30 years on the sea floor. On paper, this looked like a real salvage candidate. Then they looked inside. The Prinz Eugen was not an empty shell. She was a warship that had been abandoned in a hurry. And that meant she still had everything a warship carries. Around 2,800 tons of heavy fuel oil still sealed in her tanks. Just sitting there, in an upside-down ship at the bottom of a Pacific lagoon. Now think about what it would actually take to remove her. Every cut into the hull is a risk because you don't fully know what is on the other side. A fuel tank, a corroding shell, a section of structure weakened by 30 years of salt water that collapses the moment you touch it. You cannot just start cutting. Every section has to be carefully assessed before anyone goes near it. And all of this would have to happen underwater, in one of the most remote places on Earth. Kwajalein Atoll sits 4,000 kilometers from Hawaii, with no shipbreaking facilities, no heavy equipment, and no infrastructure to handle thousands of tons of contaminated steel. You would not just be sending a dive team out there, you would be building an entire industrial operation from scratch in the middle of the ocean just to dismantle one ship. The engineers ran the numbers. The cost of the whole operation was nowhere close to being covered by the value of the scrap metal inside her. And she was not blocking anything, not sitting in a shipping lane, not causing any immediate problem that demanded an urgent solution. She was just there, upside down. So they left her, not because she was too radioactive, not because she was too dangerous, because removing her would cost far more than she was worth, and there was no good enough reason to do it. For decades, the wreck just sat there, slowly corroding in the warm, shallow water of the lagoon. Nobody paid much attention. Then by the late 2000s, environmental officials in the Marshall Islands started noticing something troubling. The fuel oil that had been sealed inside her tanks since 1946, around 2,800 tons of it, was starting to seep out. Slowly, quietly, into one of the most biodiverse reef systems in the Pacific. The marine life that had spent 60 years growing around the wreck was now being poisoned by it. The Republic of the Marshall Islands formally asked the United States for help. And in 2018, the US Navy, the same organization that had used her as a nuclear target, abandoned her when she sank and walked away when the numbers did not add up, came back. Think about what that means. 72 years had passed. 3 full generations. The Cold War started and ended. The Berlin Wall went up and came down. The Soviet Union collapsed. The internet was invented and changed everything. And the entire time, 2,800 tons of heavy crude oil had been sitting in the sealed tanks of an upside-down warship at the bottom of a Pacific lagoon. Slowly, quietly, waiting. They used a technique called hot tapping. Divers drilled through the hull in a way that did not release any oil into the water, inserted valves into the holes, and pumped the fuel out through pipes running up to the surface. It was a delicate, painstaking operation. The hull had been corroding for over 7 decades. Every cut had to be precise. Every valve had to hold. One mistake and thousands of gallons of crude oil would pour directly into the reef system they were trying to protect. The operation took 6 weeks. The amount they recovered? 250,000 gallons. From a ship that sank in 1946, sealed in her tanks for 72 years. Still waiting for someone to come back and deal with it. With the oil gone, the immediate environmental threat disappeared. The reef could breathe again, and the last real argument for disturbing the wreck was gone completely. Today, the wreck of the Prinz Eugen lies upside down in the lagoon at Kwajalein Atoll, parts of her hull still breaking the surface, a steel island that shouldn't be there. She's become a dive site. Tourists swim through her corridors. Fish weave through the same gun turrets that once faced down the HMS Hood. Nature has done what nuclear bombs and the Royal Navy couldn't. She's finally, quietly, being taken apart. Just not by anyone's hand. One of her propellers made the journey home. It was salvaged, shipped back across the ocean, and now stands at the Lebeau Naval Memorial near Kiel, the same city where she was built, where workers laid her keel in 1936 and believed they were building something that could not be stopped. It's the only piece of her that ever made it back to Germany. The ocean kept everything else. And maybe that's the most honest ending this story was ever going to get. If you think the Prinz Eugen story is dark, you haven't seen this video yet. 118 men, alive, trapped on the ocean floor. It's 1978, and Cold War tensions are at an all-time high. During routine security checks at the US Embassy in Moscow, inspectors uncover a mysterious antenna hidden in a chimney. Attached to a cable running to nearby Soviet property, the device isn't a typical microphone, and its purpose is unclear. This discovery follows years of suspicion about microwave emissions near the embassy, leaving US officials scrambling for answers. The IBM Selectric typewriter is introduced in 1961, at a time when traditional typewriters were mechanical devices that rely on individual type bars. These type bars often jam and produce inconsistent results. IBM seeks to change that with a groundbreaking design. The Selectric introduces the golf ball typing element, a spherical mechanism that contains all the letters, numbers, and symbols needed for typing. This allows users to easily switch between different fonts, providing unprecedented flexibility in document creation. But the Selectric isn't just about functionality, it is also about aesthetics. With its sleek modern design and a variety of color options, it quickly becomes a staple in offices around the world. As the Selectric gains popularity, it finds its way into government offices and diplomatic missions. Its ability to produce high-quality documents quickly makes it essential for officials who need to communicate effectively. But it isn't just businesses that take notice. Intelligence agencies around the world see the Selectric's unique design as an opportunity for something far more sinister. The Cold War era is a time of heightened tension between the United States and the Soviet Union. Both superpowers are locked in a technological and ideological race, where information is the most valuable commodity. Espionage is rampant, and every device has the potential to become a spy tool. On 25 March 1985, CBS television nightly news breaks the following shocking story.
In another U.S.-Soviet development, Pentagon correspondent David Martin has been told how Soviet secret police in Moscow have been getting the latest word on sensitive U.S. embassy documents even before U.S. officials read them.
Informed sources tell CBS News that for at least 1 year and probably longer, the American embassy in Moscow was the victim of a sophisticated electronic spy operation.
This revelation comes to light in 1984 when the United States National Security Agency, NSA, launches a top-secret mission called Project Gunman. The story begins with President Ronald Reagan receiving a warning from intelligence sources that the Soviet KGB has successfully implanted bugs in equipment used by Western embassies. Alarmed by the implications, Reagan acts swiftly and appoints Walter Dealey, the Deputy Director for Communication Security, to lead the mission. Dealey, in turn, develops a plan to remove, replace, and examine telecommunications and information processing equipment to counter the threat. The NSA aims to bring the equipment back to the United States for a more thorough inspection that couldn't be conducted on embassy grounds. The equipment includes teletype machines, printers, computers, cryptographic devices, and copiers. Basically, anything that plugs into a wall socket. Workers take their jobs seriously. Officials live in apartments outside the US compound, always under the watchful eye of the Soviets. They often come home to find their freezers unplugged, shirts missing from their closets, or dirty glasses in the sink. The Soviets have undoubtedly bugged these apartments. As the equipment from the embassy returns to the NSA, it begins a lengthy inspection process for each item. The equipment undergoes methodical inspection to prevent the destruction of important evidence. Every item undergoes visual inspections followed by X-ray analysis, and the resulting images compare against known standards to detect anomalies. Walter Dealey, known for his strong will, abrasiveness, and unwavering commitment, plays a pivotal role in driving the project. He is determined to uncover whether the Soviets have infiltrated US equipment and pushes for rapid progress. Demonstrating his impatience, he replaces project managers midway through the operation and even offers a $5,000 bonus to the first person who discovers a bug. One physicist describes the tense and focused atmosphere during the search. "The adrenaline is really flowing," he says. "About 25 of us are involved, and we all understand the stakes. NSA's reputation is on the line, and it is up to us to find evidence of Soviet tampering. We are certain the Soviets are exploiting us." The breakthrough comes on the evening of July 23, 1984. An engineering technician notices something unusual in the power switch of an IBM Selectric typewriter. Upon closer examination and an X-ray of the machine, the technician discovers a hidden implant. The implant is a marvel of Cold War espionage. It includes a magnetometer that converts the mechanical energy of keystrokes into magnetic signals. These signals are then transmitted via radio frequencies to a nearby Soviet listening post. The device can be controlled remotely and is activated only when needed to avoid being detected. What makes the implant so insidious is how advanced it is for its time, including 1-bit core memory and integrated circuits, an advancement that NSA engineers have never seen. The bugging devices are meticulously designed to evade detection. For instance, the implants use short, intermittent radio transmissions, often concealed within the noise of Soviet television signals. They also operate on low power, further complicating detection by the outdated equipment used by US technical security countermeasures teams. Although the implant was a highly sophisticated device, it had some limitations that affected how it recorded characters. It couldn't detect special keys like shift, space, backspace, tab, and carriage return. Since it can't tell when the shift key is pressed, it always records lowercase letters, even if the shift key is used to type uppercase letters. Additionally, the hyphen and underscore can't be recorded because they are in a default position. As a result, a sentence like "meeting with Jerry at Tulip Hotel" is recorded as below. Upon discovery, NSA engineers undertake a comprehensive reverse engineering process to study the implants. They compare bugged and unbugged Selectric typewriters side by side, documenting every modification with video and photography. Unique characteristics of the bugged typewriters include additional springs, modified switches, and altered components that control the movement of the Selectric's iconic golf ball typing mechanism. The implant's sophistication reveals a deep understanding of US inspection techniques by the Soviet engineers, who designed their devices to filter out frequency harmonics that nonlinear detectors typically search for. Out of the 11 tons of equipment returned from the embassy, 16 IBM Selectric typewriters are found to be bugged. It highlights vulnerabilities in the US government's technical security protocols and forces a re-evaluation of practices for inspecting and shipping sensitive equipment. The Department of State, in particular, implements stricter policies and procedures to safeguard against future espionage attempts, many of which remain in effect today.